telling everybody the good news, the core of the joy, and I appreciate that.
She usually gets you there. I appreciate you from across the shop.
What's going on, y'all? This is Josh from Team Super Shoe, and welcome back to another episode of the Shoe Show. We're not talking Vans Ultra Ranges. No, we're talking about the one and only core of the joy, the Super Shoe of NASCAR, and just anything NASCAR related. Super pumped to have you guys here today. We have on a NASCAR media producer, Mr. Andrew Higginbotham. He is known as Higgy, and you may have heard that name before on the little podcast we listen to every week, Stacking Pennies. He comes on, he talks about his history as not only a producer in NASCAR, but also a race fan. And it's pretty cool to hear a story where somebody has turned their fandom into reality and, is making a living that way. If you guys could please like, comment, subscribe on YouTube. If you're on the audio realm, please rate and review. And if you haven't hung out with us on Team Super Shoe on Facebook, that's where it's all started. Team Super Shoe on Facebook. It's a group on Facebook that we have a lot more content there than we do here. This is more or less kind of an outlet to do cool things and get kind of behind the scene look at like Stacking Pennies. And also, lastly, we have a brand new Instagram account where we kind of share reels or stories there, and hope you guys come and hang out with us there. Otherwise, y'all, appreciate y'all hanging out with us once again, and please enjoy. Higgy.
All right, we'll start in 3, 2.
Man, well, I feel honored that y'all asked me to be on the Shoe Show.
All right, y'all, we are back, and we are hanging out with the producer of one of our favorite podcasts, Stacking Pennies with Corey LaJoy, Mr. Andrew Higginbotham, or as we like to call him, Higgy. How are you, man?
Great. How are you guys?
Good, man. So obviously Higgy is a little bit of a play off of your last name, but is there like any type of interesting story behind that, or is that just something you've had since you were a kid?
I've had it since I was a kid. My dad went by it when he played sports. Everybody called him Higgy, and so it just kind of was passed down to me. 12-letter last name is a long one, and everybody looks at you funny when you say it. So I'm like, just call me Higgy, and it's unique. So there's not normally two Higgies anywhere. But the funny thing is, I do get a lot of, oh, I know somebody with that last name because it is unique, and they're like, are you related to so and so? I'm like, no, I don't think so. But other than that, just call me Higgy.
Awesome, man. Well, we appreciate you coming on the show. This is a show that we talk about Corey LaJoy a lot, and obviously he does his Stacking Pennies stuff, and you have a lot more history than just Stacking Pennies. You work for NASCAR, and but do want to let you know we appreciate all the work you guys put into. Now you guys got the YouTube channel up going, and I was just watching it with just like race highlights and race chatter and stuff between, like, this week it was the 48 and the 5, and so appreciate that extra work because I enjoy watching people talk for some reason, much more than just listening to it on a podcast on my Bluetooth.
Oh yeah, definitely. When you can add some video substance to it, it's a lot of fun. I call it a scavenger hunt for when the guys talk about something. I got to go in the archives and find it, and I really enjoy that. Thank you very much for watching and for all those that watch the podcast. It means a lot to me, and it means a lot to Skip and Corey. So it's been fun learning that process and just putting it all together for the fans. That's what it's for.
Yeah, you must keep Days of Thunder like ready to go at any moment in time.
Yes, yeah, they're always full of quotes. Even this week, they mentioned one. He's going high, he's going low. It was a good one, and so yes, we have that whole movie pretty much on standby because you never know when they're going to quote it. That and maybe Talladega Nights, one of the highlights. It's a lot of fun.
So walk us down. How did you get to where you are now? You don't need to go back to like when I was a baby. I always wanted to, but like So as far as adulting goes, like at which point in time in your life did you decide that this media avenue was one that you wanted to pursue?
So I had always been a fan. I mean, not to go back too far, but I've always been a fan of racing since I was little, and grew up a fan of NASCAR. And a few years ago, in 2019, I was working in technical aspects, and had a background in doing video and audio and stuff, but I'd never really applied at NASCAR to do anything. I was actually working at a church as a tech director. But I went to a thing called the Little 600 over at what is now Trackhouse Motorplex in Mooresville, North Carolina, and Corey was there. And it was actually the first time I met him. But there was a guy there that was streaming this race that was held the week of the 600. He was in a NASCAR shirt, had a camera and a backpack that was streaming to a website for NASCAR. And I struck up a conversation with him and and he was like, "You do this stuff?" And I'm like, yeah, I do." And so he was like, "Well, let me give you a business card. We're looking for people." And to come in and help stream what was then called fanschoice.tv, which is now became NBC Sports Gold and now Flow Racing. So I was brought in on the ground level of that just to observe, and then I kind of proved that I could do it. I was part-time just by meeting this person. His name is Jeremy. He's a great guy, and he brought me in, and from there that opportunity blossomed into a full-time position at NASCAR as an associate producer. And I was working with Flow Racing. Well, back then it was in NBC Sports. And then after that, I got moved to international broadcast, which is what I do today. Other than Stacking Pennies, I help with the international broadcast for the Cup, Truck, and Xfinity series that send it to the world. But and I got bumped up to a producer in that time. I started in 2020. So it was all basically skill set that I'd learned through life that got me meeting the right people by going to events. Like if you're at a racetrack, talk to people, network. And that's how I got my foot in the door at NASCAR. And I took that open door and swung it wide open. And I've never looked back since. It's been a lot of fun and really, really cool opportunities.
Now, with that, as you've grown from what is eventually going to become Flow Racing into the NASCAR aspect of things, and kind of moved up in the ranks, has it gotten easier and more involved, or as you move up, it gets a little bit more of a handful, and you kind of have to get like deeper into it and more committed to it?
There's definitely commitment. I mean, we work weekends, not every weekend, but a lot of them. You're on a rotation kind of with other people in your department. But it started out as part-time and then grew into full-time. I was doing stuff just late nights and weekends, streaming local races, and they still do that now. I mean, we got Bowman Gray, we've got Summer Shootout, we got all kinds of stuff that we stream, and the Cars Tour, and all that stuff with Flow Racing. That's been phenomenal, grassroots stuff. But moving up to the international side, it's been really cool to just be more involved with the Big Three series. And it does take a lot of time. I mean, it is a full-time commitment. I'm as much of a fan as I am an employee. So if I wasn't working the race, I'd be watching it anyway. So it's like, why not push some buttons and be fully immersed in it with them, looking at all the camera shots instead of just the TV screen. And it's really, really rewarding, but it takes a good amount of time. But at the same time, I really enjoy what I do. I love the people that I work with. And even though it can be a lot at sometimes, my employee structure and the people that are around me work hard to not make it overwhelming. And it truly is a great place to work. And I don't just say that as like they're paying me. It's a lot of fun. It's really cool. You get to do some amazing things. I've never thought I'd be able to work with Corey LaJoy on a podcast or interview drivers or any of that stuff. So it's really cool, and it balances out too. It can be, one week you can work 60 hours, the next week it might be 30, depending on what's going on. But that life balance is something that NASCAR strives to keep in check for you. So it's a lot of fun.
Wanted to ask you about the you had mentioned that you had grown up a fan. What's it like being able to do stuff like this? Looks like you were there at the Indy 500, and be able to go out there and work. I mean, what's that like?
It's really cool. So this actually was the Indy doubleheader with NASCAR that they did last year with the Brickyard road course. It was really, really fun. So I got to cover IndyCar and NASCAR in the same weekend, and then jump over to Lucas Oil Raceway Park and do the trucks and even interview Frankie Muniz, which was wild. So it was really fun, but to be able to cover different aspects of sports, to cover IndyCar, to cover NASCAR, it's so rewarding because, being fully immersed in something that you love, it doesn't feel like a job. And so I'm there with a camera capturing content, or I'm there with a microphone, asking drivers questions, interviewing them. And it's just, a lot of times I have to do like a pinch me moment. That's where I got pulled in to do on-air talent for Darlington Southern 500. And ironically, there's a Corey LaJoy fan beside me, which was awesome. So yeah, I've done everything from hold the camera to be in front of the camera, and it's been a lot of fun. And sometimes I have to pinch myself because it's just like, am I really here? Am I really doing this? Am I able to go and do these things? There's Michael McDowell in Victory Lane up, on the lift at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and just some really, really neat stuff. And it always hits me like it's one of those, like, you feel really small in the grand scheme of things, but at the same time, it's really, really fun and rewarding, and to see these drivers and interact with these drivers and crew members and teams. It's a lot of fun, and it's something I never thought I would be able to do in my lifetime. But I'm very thankful and lucky to do what I do.
So even though go ahead, Josh.
I was going to say those interviews, like say with Kyle Busch and those guys. Do you are these interviews where you're kind of just like asking them questions and that just bits for Fox or NBC, or?
So those were for our international broadcast partners, and also for the 75th anniversary. Like, they were some questions we would use in our broadcast during commercial breaks and things, just kind of talking candidly with them. And then also some stuff for screens, NASCAR television. We call it screens in the industry, but when you go to the race, I work with the group that also does the big screens at the racetracks, and we'll capture content for them too. So I'm basically asking questions that I think, the fans would want to hear, or some inside information, whatever the broadcast partners are asking for. But at the same time, I'll try and come up with some questions. It's like, a little bit off the beaten path, because if you ask them the same question, you're gonna be like, can't you just get it from the guy? I just asked 3 doors down. so whenever a driver, if you're ever interviewed someone, they're like, wow, that's a really good question, and they have to think about it, I'm like, all right, I did my job. which is fun.
Nice.
Yeah, we had when we had Shu on here earlier in the season, and we were plotting and planning. We wanted to ask him fun questions, so Josh and I were throwing stuff around, and Mike threw some questions in there, and then the Days of Thunder barn question came up, and and the question we asked him was, if you had the money and you bought the barn, what would you do with it? And when he kind of chimed in and was like, that's a pretty good penny for your thoughts question. And I was like,
oh yeah,
yes, that's a score. So yeah. So I kind of know what you're talking about with that, because especially beginning of the season, everybody and their moms asking him about, or asking all the Spire guys about the growth of Spire and, your new teammates and blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure on the media days when you've got umpteen different people from umpteen different companies asking you the same question over and over and over again, you want to do something to kind of like, hey, we appreciate you being here. So I'm going to throw, what's your favorite Kool-Aid flavor out at you or something like that,
Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, it's fun
So.
too, like, because these guys, I mean, 95% of the time they're talking about racing. So it's like, I try and, break the ice, it's cliche as it sounds, but it's like, man, sometimes they just don't want to talk about how the cars do it. Or, it's like, they're so focused on it that it's nice to it's a breath of fresh air when you can talk about something else other than like the pressures of what's the race going to be like, where are you going to qualify, where are you going to finish, how's your team, you know what I mean? So these guys are normal people, and that's what's wild. We all look up to them as heroes, and they are, but at the same time they put one shoe on at a time, and they're just people that live driving fast cars, and it's fun to interact with them and just see them on that level, but also on a personal level. Like Corey, he is such a down-to-earth person, but also just a wonderful ambassador for the sport, for his brands, for his fans. It's fun to see that interaction and to be able to dive into his personal side and see his personality in something like Stacking Pennies is really rewarding.
That's what helps us as Corey LaJoie fans. Earlier on, up until a couple of years ago, I was diehard Brad Keselowski fan, and still am. Behind me they got some Brad Keselowski diecast, but over the years, you had coverage of Corey throwing the football with Bubba and Ryan Blaney out there, and then whenever you would see a NASCAR documentary coming on TV. There was Corey with Kelly whenever she was pregnant with their first son. And then fast forward a few years, there's Corey with another one where they're talking about Spire and the first season at Spire. And I think as a Corey LaJoie fan, having that kind of access to your driver, regardless of what other people say, because you've got the lemmings out there that are going to follow the Chase Elliott bandwagon and
Right.
Follow the big name guys because that's who their brother follows or their mom follows. And I think it takes a little bit more personality to follow somebody like a Corey LaJoie or Carson Hocevar, Zane Smith, young guys coming up into the sport straight from the trucks. So they've not have as much tenure and exposure on TV. But even though I'm trying to push people to vote for Corey LaJoie for the fan vote, I'm just going to say this because he's teammates. Carson Hocevar works really, really, really hard around the fans. Just on that, I'm not saying vote for him. People watching this, vote for Shoe. You get 5 votes a day. You better be putting your votes in for Shoe. But and I'm sure you get to see all that whenever. Are you always at the tracks, or how does that work?
So I am sometimes. Normally, I am. If I'm working international, I'm in a control room here in Concord, North Carolina, doing what's called remote broadcast. But with the international broadcast, I do get to travel some to the tracks. Like I should be at the Coca-Cola 600 here in a few weeks, working on possibly going to the All-Star race as well, and a couple others maybe in the fall. But we also will book time with them at either they'll come to our building or we'll go to their shops to get some NASCAR sound bites and stuff like that. But the interactions that I have typically at the track or around here, living in the Charlotte, North Carolina area really helps because, I mean, it is NASCAR country, and you can go anywhere to a restaurant around here and see Joey Logano and his crew chief just sitting there eating lunch, or whoever. I used to run into Corey LaJoie all the time at a restaurant here because he would, to date myself, going back Sunday Money when he'd record that over a building near here, he would always come to a restaurant nearby, and I'd run into him and be like, "Hey, how's it going?" And little did I know, eventually I'll be working on the podcast with him. But it's funny how it's a small world. But yeah, those interactions at the track, I'm normally getting sound bites. Last year and the years before, I was getting sound bites for a TV show called The Pace Lap that I worked with, that aired on MAV TV with Jesse Punch. This year, I'll be pulling sound bites for international broadcasts, international partners. We do some race preview stuff with Around the Track and a couple other things that are broadcast on the NASCAR YouTube channel, as well as anything that comes down the line from our broadcast partners overseas, all about 100, 180 countries and provinces take our broadcasts around the world. So they'll occasionally ask for some things, and we'll go capture some content for them, set up some interviews and stuff, and get it done. And it's a lot of fun to do it.
So I know when we record, we have a little conversation beforehand, and then Josh presses the button, starts recording, and then we get professional, and we conduct the conversation or interview. So what is it like? So if you're doing like Stacking Pennies, you're at Nonsense Garage before everything starts recording and going. What is it like when you walk in? Like is Shu always 5 minutes late and y'all are waiting on him, or what is that environment like?
Oh yeah, no, I mean, they've been pretty on time. There's been a couple times where they've showed up a little bit late, but nothing too major normally. So we have a couple guys, Danny and Sean, that work with Alpha Vision Media. You'll see Skip sometimes wearing their shirt. They have the cameras that we use, and we work with those guys to basically record the show and cut it down. And when they get there, we're normally talking the show, but I wish some of the stuff that goes on off air is hilarious. I wish we could just capture everything, but unfortunately we don't. But they're so much fun. Even on bad days, like, Corey's had some rough races. Even when he came in after Talladega being on his side, like it was really fun, lighthearted. We had great conversations about it, both off the podcast and on the podcast. And honestly, if I could pick one person out of the 36 drivers that are normally in a race in the Cup Series to do this level of working with, Corey is at the top of the list, because he's so down to earth. He's so easy to work with, and he's genuine. And he doesn't have to turn it on for the podcast. Like, they get more professional. Sometimes we try not to talk too much because we waste all the good content when we're not rolling. We're like, no, save that for the show, because it's like, oh my gosh, that would have been perfect to get that genuine reaction from some of the things. But for the most part, they come in pretty much on time. I'll give them that. They're not rolling in, 20 minutes late, but occasionally they'll mess with each other in our group text, being like, what time is this 11 a.m. podcast supposed to start? 11:15. But I mean, we do record on Mondays pretty early in the day, and they're getting back. Sometimes they'll get back at like 3. He's like, my head hit the pillow at 4 a.m. I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, thanks for being here, buddy. I appreciate you. Yeah, and I have long nights too, because after our broadcast, we do a 52-minute highlight cut down of each race. So we have to edit it, transcode it, send it to the world. So normally if a race ends at 10, 11 o'clock at night, I'm getting home at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning as well on a Sunday night, but I'm driving 15 minutes. He's race to race, dehydrated, completely exhausted, and then comes home, has to drive home from, if they fly into Statesville, drive home to Mooresville or Kannapolis, and just, through that area. And just, it's what they do on a weekly basis is pretty intense. And to have him there relatively on time, that speaks volumes for him, because he does a great job. He doesn't keep us waiting too much.
How was he when he showed up after the Coda race?
He was not I mean, obviously it did not go like he wanted. I mean, killer
Right.
qualifying. But he talked through it and laid it out there. It is what it was. It was disappointing, but at the same time, he knows, things will turn around. It's ebbs and flows of racing. I mean, it's unfortunate, but at the same time, what can you do other than, like Ted Lasso says, be a goldfish. Don't remember it. It's like on to the next thing, man. Because what if you dwell on it, it can only hurt you. What happened last week, won't. The next race will be completely different, and you have another opportunity. And he knows that, and he'll tell you that. Every race is a new opportunity to do something special, and he works really hard at it to try to get the best he can out of that 7 car and that team, and it's a lot of fun to watch.
So enough about this shoe guy, right? So you said it yourself, you were a fan first and foremost. So who were you pulling for when you were growing up? Like, who was the driver that drew you into the sport and made you want to watch it and kind of partake in NASCAR and racing?
Well, that'd be the guy on my shirt, Dale Earnhardt Sr. Dale Earnhardt. He didn't like to be called Senior. He was my guy. So when I was 3 or 4 years old, he was dominating, winning championships in the late 80s, early 90s, and just something about that black number 3 car. I don't know what it was. My grandfather was a Chevy guy. He bought Chevrolet trucks, and I guess that bow tie, seeing that, like in the color black, and just a guy that was going out there and called the Intimidator. I mean, what's not to like? He became my guy, and I started following NASCAR probably, I was in about 1990, so right in the middle of his 7 championships, 89, 90. The earliest I remember races, I can remember Alan Kawicki winning the championship. I can remember Earnhardt winning, celebrating his 7th championship at Rockingham. I can remember all that stuff when I was a kid. I can remember, going through the 1998 Daytona 500, jumping up and down in my living room, screaming that he finally won the race. 2000 Talladega, coming from 18th to first, all that stuff. So I'm as much of a fan of the history of the sport as I am current. So it's a lot of fun to go back and relive those moments. But that's what my family always watched it. It was always on weekends. When we moved to North Carolina, when I was 4.5, we were like, hey, we watched one hot night, the first Winston race under the lights at Charlotte. And my parents, I can remember my parents always tell me, they were like, why are we not there? And we're like, I don't know. Why don't we go? So the next year we went. And so after that, we were hooked. And so it was a lot of fun being there. I was there for every one of Dale Earnhardt's special paint schemes, from the silver car all the way up to that pink and yellow car that he raced in 2000. Saw them all, wad up most of them, unfortunately. But yeah, that's what got me and my family being into racing. My grandfather was a Harry Gant fan. My dad basically liked racing. He kind of liked Earnhardt, so that didn't really sway me, but I guess it was just that black 3, seeing him up front. That was my guy.
Do you got a bucket list track that you haven't made it to yet that you have to get to one day to watch them run?
I would say I would really like to get to Talladega. I've never been to Talladega, which is surprising. I've been to Daytona. Talladega would be wild, but also another one that is high on my list just because of the area that it's in is Watkins Glen. It seems like a really cool track area, like just a really neat place with a lot of history. And I scratched one off last year being at Wilkesboro. That was amazing. I didn't, as soon as they put that on the schedule, my boss was like, you're going to this race. I'm like, okay, I'm not saying no. And so I basically drove from my house to North Wilkesboro that week every day to go up there to cover late model racing, to cover trucks and all that stuff. I was there when they tested. I was there doing all that stuff last year, and I was at the Daytona 500 for the very first next gen race, and then being there for that was just special. And seeing that race and the fans electric. Like we went to Bristol. We started going to Bristol Motor Speedway in 1996, 97. And so I can remember those races where 250,000 people, lined the track and just stampede, like the wave that went around that track and the camera flashes and Earnhardt rattling his cage. I was there. And to see and feel the electricity of that in like 30,000 people at North Wilkesboro last year was something I'll never forget. So that bucket list item got checked. I never thought it would happen, but I would say Talladega and Watkins Glen right now are my number ones to get to.
Yeah, we're trying to get Josh to go to Talladega with us in October, but we're gonna have to find out some sweet, expensive stuff that his wife likes so that way she can give him permission to go out there.
Well, yeah, I'm going for the race. The Boulevard looks wild, but I'm not much of a party guy. I'm kind of boring in that sense. I got 2 kids and a wife at home. I'm like, I'll be there I'll be there, as long as you need me to for the races. But that nightlife looks wild. It's a whole other story. But hey, that's Talladega, man.
Yeah, man. Well, I wanted to ask you, so a couple of questions here. I got some photos that we thought would be kind of interesting to look at. This first one of looks like some type of big board for your, I guess it would be, I don't know, Fox or any of the other channels that they have. Like, is this your normal view, or is this something you saw, through a weekend?
Yeah, so this was on the set, in the control room for the show. We did the pace lap. This was at our old building back in Charlotte. We've moved to a new building in Concord, North Carolina. Has the same setups, but this is a switcher, Grass Valley switcher that we use to cut TV shows or IMSA races or Fox at home races, where they're doing the cutting here in Charlotte versus the races, cameras, and everybody else is at the track. 2020 kind of started or really boosted the ability for us to remote cut shows. They still do it at the track a lot, but when like there's an independent race or something that's not happening on a weekend, or like say the Xfinity Series is somewhere else or the Truck Series is somewhere else, we'll cut those shows in a control room offsite, and it's now at the building. But that one was with special guest Larry McReynolds and Jesse Punch. I was what's called the technical director, hitting the buttons, cutting the cameras for that show for the past 2.5 years. Or actually maybe even longer than that. But that was really cool to have America's crew chief on, and I actually had to cut a video for him, like a little, what they call a sizzle for the next gen car, and he watched it and he was like, man, that was a cool video. And I was like, Larry McReynolds liked my video. It's a good day. So it was it's one of those things where it's like another one of those things where it's like, am I awake right now? Is this happening? Okay, it is cool. Because if I'm not, I don't want to wake up.
That's awesome. Yeah. So something that you and I have in common, actually, we have quite a few things in common. When I was talking to Derek and he was, messaging you, and I was getting these pictures, and from the love of the sport to, I also have going to school and have a history of, graphic and web and video editing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's, kind of how I fell into all this stuff with, the I guess, unofficial official fan club of Corey LaJoy. But
Awesome.
also I also am a guitarist as well. And he sent me this picture here.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
So wanted to know, man, do you play in a band, or what do you do?
So I did. I was in a band called Onward to Olympus. As a metal band off of a album or a label called Face Down Records. We're still on Spotify and Apple Music and all. We got a couple music videos on YouTube. But I used to tour. So I toured from 2010 to around 2015. We put out 3 albums, and that particular show was out in California at a venue out there. And yeah, it was a cool part of my life, and another one of those moments where it's like, am I getting to do this for real? Representing myself and my bandmates, playing shows that we've been all across the country and US and Canada. And it was a good time. I've been playing guitar for 25 years now. I played lead guitar in that band, and I've played in other bands, high school through college. I joined that one in college, and the funny stories were I was a senior in college, and they're like, "Oh, what are you going to do after you graduate? You're going to get a job?" I was like, I have signed. We recorded, and I've signed to a record label, and we're going on tour in February." And they're like, "What?" Graduated in December and went on tour. So it was a wild moment. Another wild moment in my life. Got to meet a lot of cool people. It's really surreal. Kind of like I'd imagine, Corey showing up somewhere and seeing a 7 hoodie or a shirt. When we go places, and fans will be lined up and buying your merchandise or already wearing it and knowing your lyrics to your songs. And it's very I even got text messages from bands that I knew that would go on tour in like Europe and Japan and other places, and they'd send me pictures like, "Hey, there's somebody at our show wearing your shirt." I'm like, oh my goodness. So it was another surreal time in my life. For most people, getting a job in one thing you love is hard to find, or when you get it, you want to hold on to it. I've been fortunate enough to do a couple things that I still can't believe that I get to do, being a musician, loving that, but also loving racing, loving NASCAR, and being able to represent the sport that I love and grew up in as a fan is just it's wild, and something that I hope and never want to take for granted, because as much as I am an employee, again, I'm a fan. So what I want to do is take what I would see and want as a fan and convey that to other fans. And that's why if Corey and them mention something, I try and find it and put it on YouTube so you can see it, because it gives substance to what they're talking about, and it's rewarding to me to give it to fans to be able to see.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Well, one final thing I wanted to bring up before we let you go, and we appreciate your time, is you had talked about growing up being a fan, and now you get to have kind of the behind the curtain access a little bit. And we have some photos here of I take it your kiddo there, and family, and
Yes.
You get all this stuff and get to share it with family. I mean, what's that feel like to be able to give back to the family and be able to also make a living out of it?
Oh, it's really, really rewarding, really awesome. That's actually Martinsville last year in the fall with my parents. They got to meet Corey. They've met him a few times. And Leanne actually took that photo. Corey's PR. She's awesome. But it's really cool. My kids have really grown up. They know I like racing. My son's really starting to like racing. We'll be sitting there playing. We play NASCAR Rivals on the Switch. Can't wait for a new game to drop at some point. I know it's coming, but he started to really embrace it, love it. We took them to my wife took my kids to the All-Star race last year, and that was their first Cup Series race experience, and to have them in the stands to watch, and then to be able to share that experience and see them light up and really enjoy racing and kind of be able to see it. Eventually I hope to get them down in the pits with me. They're still a little too young for it, or their attention spans aren't quite there yet, but one day I'll take them and really show them. But I have been fortunate enough to let them meet Corey. Corey's always so gracious with them. And I had to take some of this stuff out of my son's room because he commandeered like all the stuff, it's like, I had it on my desk and he's like, no, I want that in my room. I'm like, okay. But so, but yeah, he sets up races and my daughter has grown to appreciate it, which makes me happy because it's like, if I enjoy it, I want my kids to enjoy it, but I don't want to necessarily force it on them. But we go to the summer shootout, which is a Legends cars, which Keelan Harvick's racing in, and Brexton Bush. A lot of the young guys coming up through the ranks, they go at Charlotte Motor Speedway during the summer. We go every time, as many times as we can during the summer to that. I've taken them to Bowman Gray Stadium last year. They got to experience that, and I know Skip's racing this weekend again in a modified up there. So it's fun to show them everything from roots racing all the way up to the best drivers in the world, in my opinion, in the Cup Series and everything in between, and hopefully cultivate their love and passion for racing so that will be passed down, at least in my family, to the next generation.
That's awesome. It's awesome. Well, Derek, you got anything left before we let this guy go?
Just one quick question. Higgy, why a Camaro instead of a Challenger, sir?
Oh man, well, that comes from, again, my grandfather being a Chevy guy. All the guys I root for drive Chevys, or did in the past, and even in the present. Corey's a Chevy guy, and I don't know. I have always liked the Camaro. For anybody that doesn't know, I have a 2012 Camaro SS. And my son loves Challengers and Chargers. And maybe eventually I'll sway that way to go Mopar, who knows? But right now I'm bow tie till I die. And, he enjoys riding in it with me. I got a car seat in there in the back. Can't buy a Corvette because I need a back seat. So, but they love riding in the Camaro with me. I've got long tube headers and no exhaust. So it's very loud. But they enjoy it. So it's fun to have a little bit of a kind of a quick car. They're always like, hey, we're getting on the interstate. They're like, floor it, Dad. I'm like, I got to stay within the speed limit. I mean, I can get there pretty quick, but I can't just keep going, because
You mean when you're getting on the interstate in Mexico?
Right, exactly. Down south of the border, we have a great time, and nobody's the wiser. But yes, it's a. I enjoy all types of muscle cars. I'm not. I don't dislike them. I mean, Fords, Chevys, Dodges. Wish Dodge was still in our sport. That was very sad when they pulled the plug on that and pulled out. They had a beautiful car, that SRT 8 that they had, that red one that was a prototype. I was like, oh, this is gonna be awesome. And then they're like, sorry. And I'm like, oh. But we enjoy Chevy, Ford, Toyota. Appreciate all them and their support. I mean, we can't do anything without manufacturers, sponsors, and most importantly, the fans. Everybody watching this, everybody at home that supports NASCAR. We are nothing. Sports are nothing without their fans. And as an employee, as a person who loves NASCAR all the way to my core, I appreciate every one of you that watches this, that supports Corey, that supports the sport. You make me strive to be better, and you make us strive to put on the best product that we can. And that's genuinely something that we hope to do. And it's a lot of fun to be a part of it, to be a small part of it, but also to just keep spreading, the word that NASCAR is amazing. The people are amazing. And Corey is a lot of fun to watch.
Well, Higgy, we are a podcast that's the fans, run from the fans for the fans. We ultimately kind of have these opportunities through being connected a little bit through Corey Inspire. And so it's cool to see, hear your story of not only that, you got, now are working for NASCAR and you're on the podcast we listen to every week, but you're also you're coming back from, a family and from a history of just being a fan, of just being a cheerleader for the 3 car. So pretty cool to hear all that, man. And honestly, man, we just appreciate you coming on the Shoe Show, and hopefully people enjoyed your stories, and pretty inspiring to hear that a race fan made, his passion and love into a career. So just appreciate you, man.
Well, thank you very much. Yes. And anybody, there's always job openings, careers.nascar.com. I'm not a billboard for it, but I mean, if you want to come into our sport, the doors are open. Just apply and make connections, and the sky's the limit. And for me, it's been super rewarding, and just, I mean, not everything is rainbows and butterflies, but at the same time, not to lose step of what I get to do, even on the hard days. It's like I get to be around and watch cars on track. I get to be fully immersed in a sport that has the most passionate fans, the best fans in the world, the best content, the best, racing out there. It is very rewarding. And if anybody out there sees themselves wanting to do it, make connections, find those people that work in the sport, and just, apply yourself, and you never know where you can go, because I'm the poster child of just making connections, working my way, proving that I could do it. And I never thought, again, I'd be where I'm at, but I'm so fortunate to be where I'm at. Super thankful for everybody that trusted me. And I hope to continue to help the sport grow.
Awesome, man. All right, Higgy. Well, I appreciate you, man. Take care.
Awesome. Thank you very
Thanks
much.
for coming on.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Higgy, once again, thank you so much for coming on the Shoe Show. It means a ton that you take the time out of your busy day to come hang out with us and share your story of, not only being, a media guy out in the NASCAR realm, but also that your stories of being a fan, being somebody that has played guitar and toured around the country for 5 years, and pretty cool to hear your story. Appreciate you, man. And I hope that people enjoyed that story and maybe find some inspiration from it. If you guys haven't already, please like, comment, subscribe on the YouTube channel. If you are on the audio realm, please rate and review. And if you are not hanging out with us on Facebook, that is where it's all started. Team Super Shoe on Facebook. It's a group on Facebook where we have much more conversation there than we do here. Otherwise, y'all. Oh, and one last thing. We're coming up to the All-Star race. So make sure you go to NASCAR.com/fan vote. Vote for our guy, Corey LaJoie. You can vote for him 5 times a day. You can really do it back to back. So just do it over and over again. And hopefully we can get him into the All-Star race if he doesn't race his way in. Otherwise, y'all, I appreciate you once again. Y'all, God bless, stay safe, and go Corey LaJoie.